Be ready for an unpopular opinion. Mind is the battlefield. Every model, every mental model, whether it's a decision-making model, whether it's a model about putting people in a box and how they behave, how they do something, why they do something, for the most part, they're all wrong. They're not wrong because, something's not going on. And they're not wrong necessarily because you can't have a likelihood of what's going on. They're wrong in that when you put somebody in that box and say it's definitely that it leaves a person unable to change. And your connection with them has been broken. You can never see them change or adapt over time. So what happens is that when people value what other people think, like when they take a doctor's word for, what he's saying is definitely true without an examination or further tests, to verify, that's what's going on, that they get stuck. You may end up treating something, not realizing that the real mental model, the only thing that's really true about the mind, is that we get limited, we get stuck by pride, fear, lust, anger. We get blinded a bit. When we get angry about something or we're fearful something's going to happen, sometimes we read into stuff in messages. Sometimes we look around, we think something's going on. It's not really necessarily going on. But what happens is when we say that people are definitely stuck, they're definitely this personality, I can tell you that most of the time it's because the person's never either, one, had to be something else. They've not had 3 kids and one in the ER and then have to make it to work the next day. They've not needed to think a different way. They are a technology person and they studied technology, and so they've got to focus on being that perfection in language and whatnot because that's part of their job. They're not a salesperson who's got to focus on twisting words to get the ball rolling, to move fast. But here's the thing. Some people have just not been listened to. Some people have been pushed down in different ways. And this is done by things like gossip. When you take what mental model you've decided somebody is and then share it with somebody else. When you take slander, when you even gossip about things with people in a good way, is that it breaks down a relationship of trust with somebody else and integrity, where they can walk through and make their own decisions. But also, it doesn't help them to really have an engagement with somebody because the other person immediately becomes trapped by whatever it is the person thinks. So it's like getting an expectation told to you before going to see a movie about how great the movie is. And then all of a sudden you're underwhelmed. So it's good to get feedback on what people think, but in so much that you make your own decision. The mental models themselves are healthy only to a point. And that point being, you could be totally wrong. And that the other person telling you something and you deciphering it has more to say about you, how you decipher something, than the other person. So if you cannot see the opportunity in burnt toast served to you, then I would say, and the other person, they're particular, they won't take their steak without a particular garnish. I would say that what happens is that person who's not taking the steak without a particular garnish, they are going to build something and they're going to be frustrated and they're not going to know why. They're not going to know why because they've built something on retroactively what they decide perfection is. The other person who sees burnt toast in front of them and decides to look for what opportunity there is, they're always going to have a gentleness about them. They're always going to have people around them that are going to want to protect them. They're always going to, work through things. Now, people are always going to have to deal with people with other models. The thing is when we deal with somebody with another model who thinks that the soil, what Jesus said was the real mental model, you have your bitternesses, you have your distractions that are keeping you from being focused and determined on what's good stewardship, what's good temperance. When you're focused on dealing with everybody else's mental models, you recognize the frustration that everybody else has that you don't necessarily need to have, But you can temporarily dive into, when you dive into one of those things, even temporarily, lust, greed, sin, or lust, greed, sloth. That those are the things that end up making, you frustrated, and they all come from you. They don't necessarily come from the other person. So when you have your stuff figured out, you're okay, and you can fend off those people that put you in a mental box in such a way that they get stuck thinking in who you are, and it tears them down, because deep down they know that they're doing something improper, and they're going to push away good people who are going to care about them, and they're going to attract people that are only going to further frustrate them, because they're focused on what's of the earth, focused on what's down below, not what's above. If you're focused on what's above, you're focused on helping people with their soil. You're focused on their bitternesses and their distractions. And you're recognizing that when they receive something from you, it's what was meant for them. It was not meant for you. And so you're helping them fail through their process to get to success, and releasing them to help them figure out that they don't need to hold on to those bitternesses, that they don't need to look at every situation has to be, the same as yesterday. And when they get stuck in that cycle, they have to break free of it. They have to separate, at least for a time, until they can get right in their own head again. To have, they have a freedom to allow other people to be mad, allow God to, run around that wrath with them, but not have that wrath come out on you. Because let me tell you, when you're separated from somebody that's angry with you, or who thinks bad about you, or who thinks poorly about you, it doesn't need to affect you at all. I mean, it might if they gossip and people take in false witness and different things, but it doesn't have to change who you are. You can overcome every problem people have, every fear that they get from gossip or anything else, just by being who you are. You don't have to allow them to control your life. You allow them to control your life by having that unforgiveness. So you've got to, take command of that and open up. Allow what's a distraction for somebody else. If you're being a distraction for somebody else, maybe there's a lesson for you in there, maybe there's a lesson for them. But, you take it as it comes, because if you get stuck not realizing that the enemies are, what they are, the jealousy, different things, and that's the problem, that it's sticking in your mind, somebody else's mind, and that you don't have to accept how somebody else sees you. You don't have to value yourself how somebody else sees you, that you can allow a releasing of those mental models and go through the process yourself. Because I guarantee you that when you start lifting people up in the real process and allowing for dissonance with people who get mad at you for you're not accepting what it is that they see in you, or that they're not you're not accepting how they value your work or your ethics or whatnot, or how gossip goes through, you can walk away from all that and be happy, be fine. But you can only do that if you work out the fact that the only thing holding you back is looking back at your old situations and digging out those stones, those people that you're mad at, that didn't do you right this way or that way, that your own regrets, what you feel you should have done better, but you can't. You look too far into the past, you look too far in the future. You're not focused on now at all. And now is where you change things. So if you're talking about speculation about what somebody is or is not thinking, or is not doing, what they can and cannot know, I'd be careful. Because if you're prideful, the humble will come around and humble you. They will be way smarter, and you won't know, I won't know that they're around. So, that they've already got you figured out. But if you're prideful, you might, in your pride, take yourself out, not realizing it. Not because of anything else, then they're going to be weaker, more emotional vessels that will want to take you out just because of their anger, because of their own sin. They don't want to. They're ashamed that they did something wrong to you, and so they want you to eat it. So be careful. love. It's the freedom, the grace, everything that we get in love, we give in love is what frees us. Frees us from everything in this world. It protects us. People want to maybe hurt you, but they can't. It drives them nuts. So there's all kinds of dynamics in Scripture, whether you're talking about, the crucifixion dynamic, or whether you're talking about the Judas dynamic. How did Christ know somebody was gossiping or going to tell somebody? Because there's tells. Like, human behavior is not really changed. We want to say that it's different, but it isn't necessarily. We just all have different experiences. So we've got, different movements, different cultures that we have to process. But after we figure out how people process, they got you. They know a lot more than you want them to know. A lot of the times. In any case, there are people that are gifted in this and people that aren't. But Jesus was very gifted. He was very gifted because he didn't have bitternesses. He could free himself from thinking in the sense of a mental model, and he could revert that he didn't have to know the mental model necessarily, that he could look inside somebody else and ask himself how they're portraying themselves within that community and how he would feel empathetically. He could step outside of who he was and look to somebody else, to care about somebody else, and it was that freedom that allowed him to create a kingdom that was lasting long after he was gone, that will forever last, that people recreate and they rebrand under their own name. They create gods and whatnot that they think are higher, these mental models they put people in, they think they're higher. Oftentimes they'll press down people who have a sense of propriety, who have a sense that you should feel guilty about certain things. You should, you shouldn't take and never give, things like that. And when you make those people feel guilty, and then you taper them down, you're pushing down that they should feel guilty for not doing something that you would think would be rightful to do, and you've created more work for them, and you press them down too far. Only way for somebody to release that is allow them to speak and allow them to be led through the process of dealing whatever it is they're dealing with. And people will clash when they assume things about each other. They're going to clash. And clash when they assume things about each other every time. And you're going to cause problems for yourself. Things that are cat's game, you can't change. You can't change that. People are going to get angry sometimes, even when you're kind. Can't change. Some people want to crucify you for years and years and years. Can't change that. Sometimes the quicker you let go of a house that's breaking down, faster God will build it back up. So, if you confront something and, everyone comes around and defends the confrontation, that's the prophet. It's the prophet who confronts things. You gotta let it tear down. If you let that, they're tearing down, tear you down, you're gonna be in a world of hurt. So the apostle's gonna be different. The apostle's gonna go in there. He's gonna turn people over, let people confront themselves in their hearts. Love them anyway, let them kill them. So as Jesus did. And they're gonna end up, far, far greater than other people. But people who, there are a number of people who use Christ's name to get funded, who then utilize their own sense of mental models, create so much extra work for everybody else. Because the people who really feel guilty, people who have a sense of remorse, they end up protected long term just because they can't articulate certain things. Or they pursue through it and they articulate it faster and greater. And then those people are really in trouble. They get really scared. They get really scared when they get exposed. Christ didn't expose the temple. He didn't expose the temple so the temple would tear down. He exposed the temple so the hope for change, trusting in love, is written in the hearts of people to change it.